these goals. And so I chose the economy and like job growth for the goals.
Uh-huh.
So I'm kind of like, okay, well, how do I relate music to that? That. And of course, there's a million statistics you could find, but I'm not really here to ask you that. To me, it's kind of like, well, music is just so important and necessary that I feel like it creates these jobs and it creates this like economy where you need music.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the best examples of that is through media and movies. If you ever go on YouTube, you can find all these videos of like a movie scene with the music and without it, and it's just like a completely different feeling,
Right.
completely different.
Uh-huh.
So I kind of wanted to ask you a little bit about that, and I have a few questions set up. So,
Yeah, definitely.
to start, just talk about a little bit about your career and your background, just about the credibility and all that. So,
Yeah. So I'm a music producer, um, film composer, songwriter, and basically, essentially, my job is to commercialize art, commerce,
mm,
commercitize, I guess, however you explain it. Um, Essentially, like someone would come in with an investment idea and making it like a profitable business. Um,
mm,
so basically, creating music for film and TV for artists and live shows.
yeah,
So I guess producer would be the best way to sum that up.
yeah, that's really cool. So, within film specifically, how important would you say the music aspect is, and how can it impact a film?
I think it really depends who you ask
Yeah.
because there have been cases for me where I'm working on a short film right now where they want to hear the music before the movie is shot.
Hmm.
So that's also means it's very important. And
Right.
then there have been other times where I've been told it doesn't matter what's in there as long as it's not quiet. So
Okay.
there are, I think, depending on the film, like you take a film like Star Wars, where
Hmm.
like John Williams has literally created themes that are arguably stronger characters than the characters themselves.
Right. Yeah.
You know when the bad guy is winning or when the good guy is winning
Hmm.
based off of the theme that's being played, versus a documentary where the format is completely non-scripted. So you just have somebody talking like we're talking now about whatever the documentary is about. There's no script, there's no pacing, there's no um, kind of form to it,
Hmm.
unless done by the editor or the director. So in those cases, music might not be as important of a piece of the film. But I
Hmm.
think depending on what kind of project you and your team are making will kind of depend the involvement of the music, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And do you think that that can kind of um, be correlated to the success of the movie or film?
It certainly can, for sure. Like, I mean, another John Williams example is Indiana Jones,
Yeah.
where it's literally all over that movie and all over
Yeah.
the franchise,
Right.
just as a whole. So I think in cases where the music is plays more of a character role, then definitely.
Hmm.
But there have also been there's this movie called Mass. Um, it's four people in a room and they're talking. The entire movie takes place in one room,
Hmm.
and it's about these four characters discussing death essentially.
Hmm.
And there's no music in the entire movie, and
Ah.
it's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say. I think more than something looking at it as a way to how to predict the success of the film rather than looking at it like that, looking at it as like a character. that has a role in the film. Sometimes it's a big role, sometimes it's not. It's just
Yeah.
part of the experience as a whole. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, along with the economic part of this, there's kind of talk about like job growth, and I know millions of jobs within music, and especially within film. I mean, I assume you'd probably know quite a bit more than me about like how many different jobs there are. Can you kind of talk about just how music creates job growth?
So music in the sense of film, like film particularly, or just the
Hmm.
music industry as a whole?
We could start with film. I think kind of both, really.
I think it certainly depends on the type of movie because
Mhm.
if you look like at like a big, say like a Marvel movie, right? That those movies technically employ around 20,000 people
Jeez.
between all the way from the director down to the person doing craft services and transportation, right?
Yeah.
Like Doctor Strange, like that probably employed like 15 to 20,000 people. That entire movie. So
Yeah.
it's a big budget movie like that certainly creates a lot of jobs.
Mhm.
Specifically in music, and not to discourage you in a way, but it's really hard for musicians right now.
Mhm.
Um, there are a lot of situations where companies will come in and make what's called libraries, and then the production company pays a fee to have access to all the music that's already in there. So instead of
Oh.
like working with a composer and being like, oh, like we want this scene to be like that, they'll literally go to the website and just pull off like a bunch of cues and just drop them into the movie.
Mhm.
So there's no composer and there's no orchestrator, there's no music team. It's literally just licensed music,
Wow.
which has been really hard for composers because if you look like okay, like Doctor Strange is another example, just because I saw a movie a few days ago.
Right.
There's like probably a 60-piece orchestra, so that's 60 musicians, 5 to 10 engineers, um, 2 or 3 orchestrators, 10 copyists, I'd say, which would be like music prep, turning the scores into parts, and printing and taping the parts for the musicians to read. Um, Guitar techs, cartage companies to bring the drums and like the harp in, bigger instruments to ship them, mixing engineer, mastering engineer, composer, producer, assistant to the composer. So I'd say there'd probably be around like 100 to 200 jobs
Wow.
on a big budget movie.
Mhm.
But then you'd also look at like 100 of them being the orchestra, and the orchestra being employed for about 6 hours or like
Mhm.
a week maybe to record the score. Um, I think in the sense that your assignment is talking about job growth, I think it's talking in the sense of like salary, full time, what you call like a full time job, right?
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
what we have in the music industry is called gig work, which is contractor work. So if I wanted to hire like all the musicians that I'm paying tonight for the session, they're not employees of mine. They're people
Right.
who play that I'm like, hey, can I give you 150 bucks an hour to come over and do
Mhm.
this? But it sounds like a lot, but $150 an hour, only doing a session a day for 3 hours, it's not a lot, right?
Yeah.
So in the case of job growth, that as it pertains to the United Nations, right?
Yeah.
It I think that is specifically referring to something of like a salary job, like a doctor or like a dental assistant or something that has a
Right.
salary job. Most, if not all, jobs in the music industry are is gig work.
Okay.
So it's a bunch of
Interesting.
independent contractor
Mhm.
jobs. Like you don't know if you're ever gonna have that job ever again after you leave the session.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So okay, that's interesting. I didn't really realize that in relation to the project. So yeah, and
Yeah.
you
I
kind
mean,
of talked.
I've never had to call it a regular job. It's all like gig work. What am I doing this week? Oh, like a movie next week. Album.
Yeah.
Oh, the following week. different clients in each, different production companies, different
Yeah.
countries even. So it's always called gig work.
Cool. Um, so yeah, we kind of talked a little bit about the movie and just music in general, I guess. But um, how do you think that the world would be just without music? Because to me, I think part of the answer to this question, or not this question in particular, but my overall topic is the necessity of music is really a big role in this. And I feel like the world would just be so different without it.
It's hard to say because I think music is like both everything and nothing.
Okay.
Because I think if you look at everything in life, everything in life follows a rhythm. It's like your heartbeat's a rhythm. The way you walk is a rhythm. The way you run is a rhythm. Your breath, the breaths you take when you sleep are rhythms. The way we talk is in melodies. Like the way we're even composing words to talk to each other right now. And everything is music in a way because in your brain you're composing words to put together to describe how you feel or what you need to say or information. And it's the same thing when you're writing down scores or you're playing an instrument. It's all the same thing. It's all communication, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a tough question to answer because I think it is everything we do. Like everything is composing, everything is rhythm, everything is melody. It's just turning that into, I guess, what you would call art would be the difference, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that makes sense. I mean, I feel like it's just everything we do is somehow tied to music. It all has this relation to it. So, yeah, you've kind of talked a bit about like the not to discourage me, but the hardships of being a musician and writing. So, if you had the power to do this, what way would you change the music industry to, accommodate for this, be better?
What way would I change the music industry? Never thought about that.
Fair enough.
A lot of my life is just accepting how it is. It's hard to think about changing something. I will put it this way: there's no shortage of work for people who work hard. So there are a lot of opportunities, a lot of jobs. But I think if the music industry could rely on a little bit more of a regimented schedule, would be helpful. Like there's some mornings I'm working at like 6 in the morning, and other ones I'm up until like 3 in the morning, or like pulling all nighters. I do kind of wish that at some point there was some sort of regiment routine. So like everyone agreed that like at 9 p.m. they call it off and do something else, but it's like I never have vacations. I never have days off. It's just is what it is. You work every single day.
Yeah, of course that's tough. And I'm just kind of wondering how it can grow the economy and job growth and how that could be better, because for this whole project I'm trying to relate those together.
So I think that for relating it to the economy, your musicians are like their own business, right? They don't work for anyone. They work for themselves, right? So they're all entrepreneurs in a way, right? So I think the market rewards people for giving them what they need, but the market in a way that the market doesn't know how to get. So people are gonna want to buy an album. They'll be like, "Oh, I need that," and they can't turn around and make that same album. You know what I mean? Like the market rewards people giving them things they need that they don't know how to get. So you look at Tesla. It's like Elon Musk is, mega billionaire, right?
Right.
but I think in a way he's earned that because the market is responding to his contribution to the economy, right? In the sense of he's able to make commerce around a car or whatever, SpaceX or whatever.
Mm.
But specifically with Tesla, it's like, okay, well, we know that there's only a finite amount of fossil fuels, so let's make a renewable resource that can power transportation. And then you see how much he's done with the branding of Tesla and making it amazing and premium and those things. So he's in turn become very wealthy for giving the market what it needs but doesn't know how to get. So I think the same thing could be said for music. It's like for me when I have clients, I'm like, okay, well, who's my client base? It's like artists, because they need to make their art. They don't know how to make it. They don't have the years of experience and musicianship that like myself or Luke may have, right? So I'm thinking about it like that. So how can I reach more clients by giving clients what they need? Okay, well, what do they need? It's like they need to get their album done, or they need to have the score made for their movie. So I'm thinking in terms of that. So how it relates to the economy would be you're an entrepreneur and you need to present a product, a commercially viable product to the market, and the market will respond to it.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's kind of like music or musicians in general. It's almost like we're kind of serving the people, serving the community, serving everyone, filling their needs for what they can't do. So
exactly.
Yeah, that's great. So for your own music and just in general music, what kind of goals do you have?
Right now, I'm really focused on longevity and sustainability. I think I've been doing this for about 10 years now. And it's been like, average 14 to 16 hour work days. And then, I do 2 hours of relaxation and like 6 hours of sleep, whatever. It's not sustainable over the long term. So right now, all my decisions aren't how can I get this done in the short term, but how can I set myself up to do this for as long as humanly possible. So goals for me are more balanced right now, more mental health, more physical health, diet, all the things that aren't related to music in a way, because all those goals in music are something that's out of your control. Does that make sense? Like you getting 1 million streams on your album, or you getting this many views on TikTok. Like you may be able to influence it, but that's something that's out of your control. Winning a Grammy is completely out of your control. Having a box office success is completely out of your control, right? There's nothing you can do about it. So it's almost pointless to think about goals in the sense of achievement, and more in the sense of how can I set myself up to do this for as long as possible. So for me, a big core value is excellence, doing things to the best possible ability level. So for me, it's how do I deliver quality? It's when I take care of myself, or when I sleep really well, that I do my best work. It's when my mind is clear, not fuzzy, and I have a bunch of anxiety or whatever. Or I'm tired. It's like, so my focus right now, my goal is to remain focused on longevity in the sense of making sure that I'm taking care of myself.
Right, that's great. Yeah, and kind of relating that in a sense back to the other question, would you say that it's hard to have really a long career in music, and how maybe could that improve in a way?
So your question is how to kind of stay in the game? Or what?
Yeah, you could say that, right? How to improve kind of I guess a longer career for musicians, longevity.
A lot of it is purpose driven, right? So it's answering a question like, well, why are you doing this? Like, what's your reason for doing this? What's your purpose for doing this? And and answering that question first and foremost, because I think now when you're a kid, you're told to go to school, and you do that, and you go to school again, and you go to school again,
Right.
and then you've spent 20 something years of your life doing that, and you're like, shit, now what?
Right.
And your world is completely your oyster. It's like you can do anything you want.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of that is really defining for yourself why you're doing what you're doing and what you want out of your brief time on this planet.
Of course, yeah.
So for me, it's making my purpose is making art at the highest level, highest level possible. So that keeps me interested in plugins. That keeps me interested in who's charting right now. That keeps me interested in how people are selling their publishing catalog, or what mics they're using. That keeps me focusing on that keeps me interested in learning new things.
Mm-hmm.
But I think sometimes a lot of people want to be comfortable. A lot of people want consistency, which doesn't exist in the world, or much less the music industry, right? So,
of course, yeah.
But I think a lot of it is just figuring out how to level up constantly. So for me, that gets me out of bed early in the morning. I'm up at like 6:30 in the mornings. That keeps me focused on doing the best work I possibly can, getting new clients, making more money, right? So that thing answers all of my questions essentially in my life. Like I'm never like, well, what should I do? Because I'm like, well, does this serve my purpose? Is this in line with what I want to be doing with my life? No? Okay, well, I'm not doing it. And the answer is yes. Okay, well, I'm doing this 100%. I'm doing this to the best of my possible ability.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Nice.
So purpose-driven questions, I would say, would be a big head start, I would say, on most people, even on this planet, because I would say about 90% of people on this planet go through life without even asking, what am I supposed to be doing? What am I supposed to be doing here?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Of course, yeah. And I hear you talk a lot about like growing and getting better, and this is a little bit of a more like personal question for me for like for my career in music, hopefully. How do you recommend really sticking to getting better in some sort of way musically? And since I haven't been doing this too long, I have a lot of room to grow, and it's like all this stuff happening at once. It's like, how do you kind of focus on getting better at one thing in particular?
I would say what I've come to learn is that you will always, like, if you're told to walk 5,000 steps, you'll walk 5,000 steps. But if you love walking, you're going to walk until you can't walk anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's enjoying the act of what you're doing rather than the result at the end of it.
Right.
So, like, if you just love walking, you're just gonna walk. You're not gonna be like, oh, 4,800. Like you're not gonna start counting every single one. You're just gonna enjoy continuing to push through it. And I think that is the key to staying in the game, because we were talking about it at the burgers, that getting in the industry is actually pretty easy. It's like staying in it is way harder.
Right.
Staying in it is way harder than getting in. It becomes harder the moment you get in.
Of course.
Because the stakes are real now.
Right.
Like every move you make has to be calculated. So for me, it's been learning how to love process. And of course, we all think into our future, like shit ton of money, or a bunch of houses, or like being like notable, or winning a Grammy or an Oscar or whatever it is, right? We all think ahead into that, but it's okay to want those things. But the key is learning how to love the process of learning it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So because that's going to keep you moving forward through it further than being told, oh, you're going to win a Grammy one day.
Right.
So if you love the process of learning what you're doing and loving the process of making art and wanting to do it at the highest level possible or at the deepest level possible for yourself personally, then that will always keep you focused on it. But the second you win that Grammy, you're gonna be like done, and you're not gonna have a lot of drive to continue to do that, right?
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like making goals more personal to your I don't want to say success, but success outside of like money and fame, but success as in like happiness and like really loving what you do. You know, so
Yeah,
it's like,
that loving what you do is absolutely key. And I think it's sad in our society now we're told like do things you gotta do, right? You're not like, but loving it will get you further than being told to do it, right? So
of course.
there was like this experiment where they got like a bunch of fleas together and they're all jumping like up to here, right? And then they put them in a jar and the ceiling was like right here, and they could only jump up this high. When they took the lid off the jar, the fleas just kept, even when there was no ceiling, right? They kept jumping to the height